Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm the current president of UMN Robotics, and I was a member of FTC Team 7152 for 5 years.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace, and I am the Director of Programs for UMN Robotics, and I was a part of Team 7190, the Green Girls, for 6 years. Today, we're going to give you a short presentation on what we wish we knew before we entered First Tech Challenge.
First, let's give you a little bit of information on why we're qualified to speak about this. UMN Robotics is a club on the U of M campus that hosts a number of different collegiate robotics teams. Our two main projects currently are an autonomous snowplow and a NASA mining robotics competition. So we compete in those, and then we also complete outreach throughout the campus and around the surrounding communities.
All right, the first topic that we're going to address today on your first season in First Tech Challenge is building your first robot. So what I wish I knew before starting First Tech Challenge was to keep your very first robot simple. As you know, the kits that you buy with like Tetrix pieces and metal pieces in them come with an instruction set of like a starter robot. And this robot is very simple, and it allows you to focus on attachments for your robot so that you can actually score points, which is really important when you get to your first competition. Another thing to keep in mind is to keep your wiring clean and off of the ground. It's important to keep your wiring clean so that you can understand where all of the wires from the wheels are going to, so you can effectively troubleshoot, as well as it's important that once you get to competition, your wires aren't falling on the ground or getting tangled in other robots, because refs and inspectors look for that as they're checking your robot out to make sure that it's not a hazard to other teams. Also, you don't want to have your robot's like battery or power cord get pulled out during a match, because then you're going to be dead for most of the match and not be able to earn points. So things that you can use to keep your wires clean and tight are twist ties, Anderson power poles, tape, and it's also important to secure your battery with these like pieces of tape or ties as well. So that's, again, another important thing to keep in mind. And the last thing on building your first robot is to use lock nuts or Loctite. A lot of the times when you're running your robot or taking it to and from competitions, it gets like jiggled around, or just like all the vibrations cause the bolts and nuts to loosen. So what the lock nuts and the Loctite do is that it keeps the nuts from moving, so that all of your bolts and nuts will stay tight and you won't have to worry about that.
Next, we'll talk about what we wanted to know about the engineering notebook. The engineering notebook is a core aspect of FTC. It shows off your team's journey throughout the season. When judges look at it, they want to know the why and the how for every decision you made. You also want to allow your team to refer back to it, so it's really important to document everything you do, both at the weekly meetings, at outreach events. Everything you do throughout the season should be in that notebook. We also recommend using an engineering life cycle to help you demonstrate the processes you follow and keep your team on track. A lot of times it can be really easy to spend too much time on one step and not enough time on another. So using an engineering life cycle helps you keep moving forward. Throughout your engineering notebook, you should document with pictures. We all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so it's really important to show the robot progress, outreach events, again, everything you're doing. It also shows off the impact of your work. Don't be afraid to show off in your notebook. You want to show off your best self, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't also include mistakes and prototypes along the way.
Exactly, that's very important. Another thing to keep in mind that I just remembered too is that on the first website, they should have a guide of how to structure your engineering notebook, or now your portfolio, and that'll give you like key steps that you need to follow or things that you need to include. All right, design and build. CAD or computer automated design can be a very helpful tool. This is great because it allows you to like prototype and like test out your ideas before actually building them. And for example, my team if we didn't CAD something, we'd always like drill one hole and then realize it needed to be 3 centimeters to the right, and we'd have to drill another hole. And eventually, if you keep doing this a bunch of times, it looks messy. But CAD allows you to test everything out and make sure you have like a blueprint so that when the builders are actually building the robot, they can go through and create the exact design that you need. CAD is also great because it allows you to 3D print parts as well, and judges like to see that you're doing 3D printing for some of your attachments or like phone holders and things like that. Some tools that you can use for CAD this season are GrabCAD or Onshape. These are great CAD tools because they're super useful for virtual collaboration. We know a lot of teams aren't completely going back to an in-person mode of meeting, and these two softwares allow you to work online on your CAD designs as well as work collaboratively with your teammates. So you and a teammate can, outside of practice, work on a design and keep editing it, as well as like leave comments on the design. Another thing to mention about GrabCAD or Onshape is that there are also lots of helpful videos online to get you started.
Programming, another core aspect of the robot game, especially with the autonomous phase. First provides code examples on their website that can be used for starter robots or for more complex systems like imaging and sensors that might be more difficult for new programmers. We recommend using GitHub to manage your code and store it so that programmers can work on the same file without running into major conflicts by creating branches. Again, they also provide helpful tutorials online that can be useful when trying to learn how to code.
All right, team communication. Team communication is very important, especially in this COVID world right now, because you need to make sure you and your teammates are all on the same page. So one thing that I recommend that my team did a lot was weekly or every meeting check-ins. So you're going to talk about what everyone's action items were, what they need help with, and what they will work on in this next meeting or next practice. This allows a lot of like visibility into what the team is doing and the progress they've made, so that you can know like either what part of the life cycle you're in, or like what part of like your team's plan you're in and where you need help. So again, that's very important as you're approaching competitions, especially. What you can call these weekly check-ins, either in your meetings or at judges' presentations, are stand-ups, because they reflect what programmers use in industry. And stand-ups are very similar to what I called weekly check-ins, where programmers get together either a daily or weekly basis to give each other an update on what's working, what's not working, and again, the progress. Finally, another form of team communication that you can use outside of meetings are Slack and GroupMe. Slack is an app that has like a bunch of channels that you and your teammates can go into and chat each other individually or in small groups. And these small groups are great because then you can break down the team into like sub teams where engineering, CAD, programming each have a little room that they can go in and talk about topics that are pertinent to those areas. But people who aren't on the programming team don't necessarily have to keep in tune to those specific rooms. GroupMe is also great, especially for groups that don't all have like iPhones or the same version of phone as well. GroupMe has some cool features like polls that you can use to make decisions as teams too.
Community outreach is another really important thing you want to try to be doing. It's a good idea to start local and start small so that you can connect with the people closest to you. We suggest presenting or demoing to classrooms and local businesses or at fairs. It's also a good idea to work with other teams around you, whether it be another school team with you or in your city or in one of the surrounding communities. Get feedback and learn. You can get feedback from either professionals that may sponsor you or somebody else you know, or you can get it from more experienced teams. A really good part about FIRST is that teams are really collaborative and want to be helping each other. Don't be afraid to reach out to another team that you've seen at a competition or just know of. When you're doing these events, make sure to take pictures and record numbers. Judges like to know the impact that you make.
Judges' presentations. So by now, I'm sure you all know that at a competition, you have to go in front of a panel of judges and tell them about your season and about what your robot does. So here are a couple guidelines to think about when you go into your first judges presentation. The first thing is professionalism is key. When you go into the presentation, you want to know what to say, and you want to have had like to either write it out beforehand or have practiced it multiple times. This makes it look like you know what you're talking about and makes it seem much cleaner to the judges as you're telling them. And this prevents any like misunderstandings about information as well too, like between your teammates or while you're talking to the judges. Another important thing that you could do to prepare for this presentation is rehearse answering judges' questions. So after you present to the judges are going to ask you some questions about your robot and your season and your outreach. And it's a really good idea to have some answers in mind and practice those questions so you don't get like stumped when they ask you one at a competition, because that never looks good. And a final thing about professionalism is try not to talk over one another. Rehearsing and practicing can definitely help reduce talking over one another, but it just looks a little unprofessional to judges or not as gracious when you talk over your teammates. Second thing to keep in mind is to use the engineering notebook, and it doesn't say it on the slide, but also use your robot during the presentations. Judges like to visually see things because it helps them understand what's going on and how your robot works. So be sure to, when you're talking about a specific attachment, turn your robot and show the judges, like move it, like put a ball or something in your robot so they can visually see how it works. Also, with the engineering notebook, refer to pages that you're talking about during the presentation by flipping to that page and physically showing it to them. So if you're saying, we decided on this attachment because we went through a list of pros and cons, flip to the pros and cons page and like show them where that happened, because judges will take note and they'll go back to that page and review it closer after your presentation. A last important thing about judges' presentations is try to cover all of the major topics throughout your season in the presentation. So you want to talk about build, you want to talk about design and programming and outreach, just so you show the judges that you're a well-rounded team and that you've thought of everything.
Now on to the competition. Competitions are really fun. First competitions always have this infectious energy that just makes people excited to be there. Don't be afraid to go around and meet other teams. A lot of teams end up having little freebies to give away or just some way to interact with them. So it's a fun idea to go around and try to meet as many people as possible. However, you do need to keep somebody at the pit. If you do well during the judging portion, judges may come around and be there to ask you questions again. You can change out who is there, of course, so everybody gets the chance to go around or to see the robot competing, but you do want to have a team member stationed at the pit at all times. We also recommend bringing a cart for your robot. It can be a bit of a pain to haul the robot from your pit all the way to the competition area, and it also provides an easy workstation if something needs to be fixed last minute. Make a checklist for between matches. You want to make sure that you have like an up-to-date battery, all of the wires are connected and staying where they're supposed to be, just to make sure that you have as fresh of a robot as possible for each of your matches. Show up to all of your matches, even if your robot is broken. It's more professional to show up and show that you're putting effort to be there, because it's not just your team competing. You're on an alliance with another team there, so you don't want to leave them empty-handed, even if you don't have a working robot.
All right, thank you guys for attending this presentation and listening to us speak about UMN robotics and what we wish we knew about First Tech Challenge. If you guys have any questions about UMN robotics or about First Tech Challenge, please feel free to contact us at any of the links or social media channels below. Thank you very much for your time.
Good luck this season.